What if the most extraordinary love stories are not the ones loudly announced, but the ones that quietly survive time? Because as the countdown to 2026 begins, one question has resurfaced with renewed intensity. How did a story that was never officially named come to feel like 4 years of love and family to so many people? Dylan Wang. Shen Yue. 4 years. Not marked by press conferences. Not sealed by public declarations, but carried forward by memory, continuity, and a bond that refused to disappear. When they first appeared together, no one imagined the weight that moment would one day carry. It felt light then, playful, almost fleeting. Two young actors sharing a screen, sharing laughter, sharing a chemistry that felt effortless but harmless. Or so it seemed. Time, however, has a way of revealing what moments truly mean. As months turned into years, fans noticed something unusual. The story didn't fade the way others did. It didn't dissolve into nostalgia or get replaced by newer headlines. Instead, it matured. Quietly. Careers grew. Lives expanded. Public paths diverged. Yet the connection, whatever name one chooses to give it, remained present in subtle ways. Not loud enough to demand attention, but consistent enough to be remembered. And consistency over time becomes something else entirely. It becomes family. Not in the literal sense that headlines rush to claim, but in the emotional sense, the idea of shared history, shared growth, shared understanding. The kind that forms when two people are shaped by the same moments, even if they walk forward separately. Fans began counting not scandals but years. 4 years of glances revisited. 4 years of interviews rewatched. 4 years of moments that felt increasingly meaningful with distance. What once seemed casual now felt intentional in hindsight. What once passed unnoticed now carried weight. Because time had filtered out the noise, leaving only what mattered. And what remained was not drama. It was warmth. The idea that something genuine had once existed and continued to exist, quietly, beyond the reach of cameras. That love does not always demand proof. That family does not always look the way the world expects it to. As 2026 approaches, fans aren't celebrating a confirmation. They are celebrating endurance. The endurance of feeling. The endurance of connection. The endurance of a story that never needed validation to survive. In an industry where relationships are often consumed and discarded at the speed of trends, this story moved differently. It aged. It softened. It deepened. It became something people grew up with. Those who followed it 4 years ago are not the same people today. And yet, when they return to this story, they recognize something familiar. Not just in Dylan Wang and Shen Yue, but in themselves. That is the quiet power of this narrative. It mirrors life. Not every love story is meant to be defined. Not every family is meant to be displayed. Some exist simply as constants, unchanging, grounding, real. As the calendar inches closer to 2026, there is no demand for announcements. No expectation of revelation. Only a shared moment of reflection. 4 years is not measured by headlines. It is measured by what remains when the noise fades. And this story remains. Not because it was loud, but because it was true to itself. As the countdown continues, one thing becomes clear. Some stories don't need to be rewritten. They only need to be remembered. And as time moves forward, this one still walks with us. Quietly, steadily, and impossibly hard to forget. And as the days move closer to 2026, the meaning of those 4 years continues to evolve. What fans are celebrating now is not a moment frozen in time, but a journey. A shared emotional timeline that unfolded quietly alongside their own lives. People who once followed this story as casual viewers now look back and realize how much has changed, not just for Dylan Wang and Shen Yue, but for themselves. That is what makes this anniversary feel different. It is not nostalgia alone. It is recognition. Recognition that some connections grow stronger not through proximity, but through time. Through distance. Through the decision not to perform something for the world, but to protect it from being consumed. In recent years, fans have learned to read absence differently. Where there were once questions, there is now understanding. Where there was once impatience, there is now acceptance. The silence that once felt confusing now feels intentional, almost respectful. Because if love ever matures, it does so by learning when not to speak. This story has never relied on constant visibility. It has relied on continuity, the quiet reassurance that something meaningful does not disappear simply because it is no longer centered on a screen. And perhaps that is why the idea of family resonates so strongly now. Family is not always about presence. It is about belonging. It is about shared roots that remain even when branches grow in different directions. It is about knowing that certain bonds do not require daily proof to remain intact. As 2026 approaches, fans are no longer waiting for confirmation. They are reflecting on impact, on how this story shaped their understanding of connection, of timing, of the difference between something that is loud and something that lasts. The world may never be invited fully into this chapter, and that, somehow, feels appropriate. Because the most enduring stories are not the ones written for audiences. They are the ones lived quietly, steadily, away from expectation. And so the countdown continues, not toward an announcement, but toward acknowledgement. For years of memory, for years of meaning, for years of a story that refused to disappear. Not because it demanded attention, but because it earned remembrance. And as the future unfolds, whatever shape it takes, one truth remains untouched. Some stories don't need an ending to prove they mattered. They already did.